What's up, people? I have a great show today. I mean, I think. Can't tell the future, but probably. Okay. How's it going, John? Yeah, this should be a great show. I just recently finished watching the interview with Lee Smolin and Eric Weinstein on Brian Keating's podcast. It's been a little bit. I haven't had the chance to watch it. But it was really good. It was fascinating. Um, for the record, Lee Smolin didn't even know that the government is declassifying UFOs. It's like that's how crazy this is as far as like the controlled disclosure is. It's just it seems to nobody seems to care at this point because we all kind of know that it's been happening. Nothing really new has been like revealed. I mean, even the people that think that it was just a hoax, like everybody would be like, yeah, joke around and be like, yeah, Area 51, where they have the aliens. It's like, have you ever seen Independence Day? But anyways, that's not what we're going to talk about today. Even though that is a great movie. That if I could ask aliens any funny question, it would be, have you seen Independence Day? I'm sure they've seen it, but I or they could see it at least. Some of them have seen it. I would watch all the alien movies if I was an alien on Earth. I'd want to like see what everybody had to think. But so today though, I want to talk about constructor theory, which is a theory of everything that has been proposed. It was written about in Quantum magazine, and it is the only theory whose name I would consider yielding to. That's it. I would never yield sentient singularity theory, that I would never yield that name to anything other than constructor theory if necessary. Because constructor theory, it insinuates that there is, a constructor of the construct, which and it basically deals in information, which is at the level of sentient singularity theory again, and it is described basically as exactly what sentient singularity theory is. It is a theory, it is a meta theory, it is a theory below any physics theory. It's not linked to any, space-time dimensions. It is the structure that causes the space-time dimensions to emerge. And so I want to talk about that. And I never thought that there would be another theory name that I would yield to other than like God theory. But that's already there. But constructor theory is brilliant, and it's catching steam, and it was written about in Quantum magazine, so we're going to talk about it. And its description is very similar to mine, but it doesn't seem to be as organized as mine. We're also going to talk about like theory of everything UFC, because Eric Weinstein in the interview with Brian Keating spoke about how what we need is like a multi-day symposium where everybody who has a theory of everything that's serious at least gets to present and show what they've got. And I think that's a great idea, but the only issue is who gets to decide who shows up. I mean, it should be somebody who's been committed to this since for at least a little while. It should be Stephen Wolfram, Eric Weinstein, me, Nassim Harmain for sure, definitely Chris Langan, like Clea Irwin for sure, Max Tegmark, Lee Smolin, I think he worked on Loop Quantum Gravity. Like these people all need to be in a single location where they can not ignore each other and they can face off and they can discuss and confront each other's ideas and confront the issues where they differ and also the issues where they're similar, because there's a lot. I include Robert Grant in that too. He should be there. Like, there's anybody with any rigor to their work should be there. But it can't just be, you know, people who have PhDs. It just can't. That's just not serving us. It's not helping us. We've made no progress. Obviously, Michio Kaku should be there too with string theory and everything like that. So there's even string theory should be allowed, even though it's kind of dominated everything. But it should be allowed. I was watching Michio Kaku on Brian Keating's podcast, and it was very interesting to see Brian Keating bring up geometric unity, Eric's theory, and Michio Kaku just kind of brushed it off, and I really realized that, like, Michio Kaku's being paid, and he admitted it, to study string theory. And the reason why he's being paid to study string theory is because he has convinced, and the rest of the physicists and mathematicians out there have convinced everyone in academia and politics by, extension, that string theory is the way forward, and therefore it gets all the funding. But there needs to be funding of alternative ideas. But there isn't. I mean, it's pretty wild. I do think that we're going to see a privatization of academic funding, because this is the only way forward, basically. It seems that our governmental systems and our academic systems are too intertwined. They're too just inseparable, dishonest, self-serving, that you can't trust them to be honest when it comes to which is the path forward. Because if string theory is abandoned, any funding that was going to string theory is not going to go to string theory anymore, which is a very big deal, because people like Michio Kaku and all these other physicists who are studying string theory and all these other mathematicians who are studying string theory will not have any monetary income, which isn't good. I mean, I want everybody to be able to, provide for their family and things like that. So, but we do need to privatize this. I think it's the only way that actually people who are even the establishment continue to get funding, because if you just expect that all of a sudden the government switches gears, only funds geometric unity, or only funds sentient singularity theory, which will not happen, then everybody else gets cast to the wayside, and that's not good. I don't want their theories to get no funding. I want them to have as fair a shot as possible. I want everybody to provide for their kids and, the roof over their head and meals on the table. So the only way forward is to make sure that funding becomes privatized, so that no matter which way academia goes, everybody gets funding. And this is very important. I don't really know what the future of this is, other than just foundations for specific, things like, I don't know, the Foundation for Cosmological Exploration or something like that, that basically leads to people being funded of these, who propose these various theories. And, but they were discussing on Brian Keating's podcast all of the various requirements that a theory of everything needs to meet, or that they would hope it meets. And I think that it's very legitimate to start listing these things out, but at the same time, they can't be binding, because if they're binding completely, then, who decides that list? There are some things that are obvious. It needs to describe where the universe came from. It needs to basically show the emergence of the standard model, the emergence of elements, the emergence of and the unification of general relativity with quantum mechanics. It needs to explain our most fundamental questions regarding the experimental results of quantum mechanics, and it also needs to make predictions that have not yet been predicted, and it needs to make predictions across fields. So far, I've seen nothing make predictions across fields but mine. But I think that that's partially because nobody is proposing predictions cross fields, because if they do so, then they're going to be labeled as a crank. And even though everybody in this space knows that, a theory of everything is a theory of everything. It was interesting. I heard Brian Keating say, he said that the soft sciences have physics envy and physics has math envy. And what he means by this is that you can't really prove a sociological theory as being correct the way that you can prove a physics theory, as far as Brian Keating is, insinuating, but I disagree with that entirely. Sentient Singularity Theory shows that there is absolutely a concrete structure within sociology that is as concrete as physics. It must be. It can't not be. There is a theory of government that is correct, accurate, and that works. That doesn't mean you can implement it. In today's times, or whatever, it might require certain constraints and technological abilities and timing and things like that. And I believe that that's the case. But there is a correct government. There isn't that's your opinion. No, we're stuck in relativity when you say that's your opinion. It's not an opinion on what is the best form of government. It's not an opinion. And everybody's wrong right now, by the way. Nobody is correct on what's the best form of government that's talking about this. Because you need people who are looking at this from a physics, scientific point of view, not a activist point of view. And this is where sentient singularity theory comes in. So one of the interesting things is that I've shown before this binary triality, which is this pattern of 6 that you see everywhere you look. And I didn't really know what to call this, but I could see what it was. But I'm realizing now that I'm pretty sure it is what is called a Calabi-Yau manifold, which is basically came up in string theory that, according to Eric Weinstein at least, is a 6-dimensional manifold that appears at every point in space and time. So this would be like the 3 primary colors and the 3 secondary colors, and the order of operations in mathematics: who, what, where, when, why, and how. These 6 fundamental questions are 6 senses that we have, the 5 senses that we currently define, and then our 6th sense, which is your emotions, and then which is like the sum totality of them all. And then you have all these other instances of objective observation that manifest this pattern of 6. You see it in electrons and neutrinos. You see it in quarks. You see it in, so you see it across the standard model in physics. You see it in the castes of a government. There's 6 castes to every government, and you can change which caste you're in, but there are 6 objective castes. You can't change the castes, but you can change which caste you're in. Lots of people go through multiple castes throughout their life, but it just, you can start off as a laborer and end up as the king or the president. But you can, in between then become a soldier or an enforcer, which is, a cop or soldier. You can also simultaneously be a craftsman or an artist. There's lots of freedom to maneuver within these 6 castes, but you cannot change the castes. And so this is what I think is this Calabi-Yau manifold in string theory, of this 6-dimensional, manifold that occurs in every point in space and time. I say the binary triality is a pattern of 6 that occurs in every instance of observation, which is every point, space, and time. Because where do you observe things? In space and time. So you can even see this with space-time, where it is, you can say it's length, width, height, and then past, present, future, but it's not really, that is it, but it's not really it. It's forwards, backwards, current location, and past, future, and present moment. So that's the real pattern of 6 in space-time. But we are too stuck in relativity. So we're like, well, length, width, and height in X, Y, and Z. It's not length, width, and height, X, Y, and Z. It's forwards towards the goal, backwards away from the goal that you towards where you've already been, forwards towards where you have not yet been, and then you're always in your current location. So it's an intrinsic constraint that you can't escape. And this pattern of 6 is everywhere. It's everywhere. I just found your theory that through Chris Langan's group. I'm interested. Awesome. Chris Langan's theory is the only theory that I have yet to disagree with. The CTMU, I haven't delved in too deeply, but I did listen to one philosophy discussion between him and someone else on YouTube. It was the best philosophy discussion I've ever heard. It was the first time I had heard Chris Langan for more than like 3 minutes. It was ridiculous how impressed I was. I mean, there's so many similarities in our theory too. It seems to be basically the same, but I don't want to say it's the same because I haven't gone through the CTMU enough to make those claims, and I don't want to take anything away from him. But his work is incredible, and it's beyond most people in physics, but it's not really beyond most people in physics because I used to not be able to understand even the like title of the CTMU, the cognitive theoretic model of the universe. And then years went by, I had like some theological epiphanies and stuff, and went back to go check on it again, and lo and behold, everything made sense. So that means that it's not a matter of not having a high enough IQ. I think that a lot of people in physics are very, very confused by it because it is insinuating the existence of God, and they can't get it. It's just too outside their perspective, but they might assume that it's an IQ issue, but it's not, because it wasn't for me, and I don't have a 200 IQ. But Chris Langan is brilliant. So I'm also currently streaming on YouTube. If you want to check out that, I highly recommend Theory of Every0ne with Tyler Goldstein. It's much better presentation with like sharing screen and everything like that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please hit the like button. Helps with the algorithm, helps boost this so that other people can see it and YouTube can't as easily suppress what we're going to talk about. But it's interesting, though, that I have basically some very concrete theories at this point surrounding sentient singularity theory that are starting to be extremely testable. One of them is I'm pretty sure that my binary triality is the Calabi manifold. If it's not, that's a problem. But I'm pretty sure that it's not a problem with my theory, but it necessarily, but it means that I have not yet linked it to mathematics to establish mathematics the same way to the degree that I would like. But I'm pretty sure it is. There's no other 6-dimensional thing that occurs in every point, space, and time. That's literally exactly what my binary triality is like all about. So, but my presence has been missed on Instagram. Thank you, Res Philosopher. But you should check it out on YouTube. It's streaming right now live on Theory of Every0ne. You can click the link in my bio and it will take you to my YouTube channel. You can see me streaming. And it's much better to see where, for one, you can close apps and stuff like that potentially if you have YouTube Premium. I don't know. But it's easier to follow along. You don't have to keep Instagram open for like 3 hours. And also, it's much easier to share my screen. But I'm on Instagram. Well, you could be on YouTube. But if you're on Instagram, that's fine too. I'm going to stream on Instagram and YouTube today. Symmetry YouTube. Right and left. YouTube and Instagram. Maybe. I don't know. Feminine and masculine. Yeah, YouTube is definitely masculine and Instagram is definitely feminine. I like both. That's not an insult either. Those are my 2 favorite social media platforms. Twitter is a mess and I don't use Facebook for anything other than keeping up with family. But YouTube is great, and it's very masculine. I've seen it in the stats that I've gone over with, advertisers and stuff like that. And it's almost all men. Well, it's not almost all men, but it's majority men, and Instagram is majority women. But those are the two platforms that are masculine and feminine. What's interesting is Instagram is about enjoyment. It's about looking at images that you like, and that's an emotional thing. YouTube is very valuable because it's not about scrolling and just being and seeing things that you like. It's about searching for something that you want to understand and then being able to understand it by watching somebody demonstrate it, which is very masculine. So, no, you're not I like both. You're not feminine because you like Instagram. I like Instagram too. I mean, it is a feminine thing, but everybody's feminine and masculine. But so that's not a rip on anyone. When I say like if you're left wing generally, that is feminine, and if you are right wing generally, that is masculine. Doesn't mean that it's an insult to anybody. But YouTube is definitely very heavily masculine in its demographic, and same Instagram is very heavily feminine in its demographic and in its way of being. That's very true. Twitter and Facebook, I have no idea what they are. They're just both messes, like total mess. Dude, I would love to be on Lex Fridman's podcast. That would be, if I could go on anyone's podcast, it would be Lex Fridman, because I would love to talk to him about AGI, because everybody's wrong. Like, everybody's wrong on AGI except me. But everybody that thinks you can build it is wrong. Like, you can build it when it's in the right constraints, but it's also emergent naturally. It's not, you don't have to build it. I don't even know if you could build it in the right constraints. I mean, you could, but it's going to just be built. It doesn't really matter. Wolfram's theory. Wolfram his theory is just, that the universe is computational, and he uses hypergraphs to model it. It's the closest to mine in methodology, I will say that. But so far, the CTMU is the closest in, like, I guess, conclusions. But make a clear goal to get on Lex Fridman's podcast. I could get on Lex Fridman's podcast one day, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take people hitting the like button, sharing this with other people, clipping it up, putting clips on the internet so that people don't have to listen to 5 hours or 3 hours or whatever, which I'm going to start doing, but it's tough. It takes a lot of time. So if you want to do that, let me know. And, I don't know. I'll compensate you somehow for it, but not monetarily. But I will include you on the in crowd of what's going on with this theory, on like behind the scenes. If anybody does that, makes like a Theory of Every0ne clips, or like a Tyler Goldstein clips channel, that would be amazing. So, open invitation. Just don't take me out of context. But speaking of Jordan Peterson, for those of you on YouTube who don't know, I have Instagram open, and for those of you on Instagram that don't know, I have YouTube open, so I'm talking to both. But Jordan Peterson talks about cleaning your room, how it's, very important. I cleaned up this entire room today, and it was a lot because I keep I call it the Zudio, because it's like half zoo, half studio, half office space. So, that's not real. That's like 1/3 office space, 1/3 zoo, 1/3 studio. But we call it the Zudio, and I have a lot of reptiles, and so like this place gets, if I'm like, changing out dirt and stuff like that, it just gets dirt on the ground, and like I make my own soil, so like it's not just a studio office. It's also like an animal zoo. So I had a lot to do, and it gets a little bit like messy in here. sometimes when I'm doing a lot of work with the animals. And I cleaned it all today, and my mind is so clear. And as I've said before, your mind is not your brain. Your mind uh, is the sum totality of all of your senses, your information processing systems, uh, your instincts, your logical abilities, and also, your environment is your mind. It's part of your mind. It's not separate at all. At all. It is your room. This room right here that I'm in is a sense-making structure for me. It's got everything organized in a specific way to allow me to make sense of the world and to allow me to be useful to use it to accomplish my goals. This desk, and the cameras and the lights and the cages and everything like that. It's very important that it's organized so that your mind is organized so that you can actually be successful. And I have a lot of work to do this week for like some stuff and like other things that are not just this, not just sentient singularity theory related, but and I knew I needed a clean, very organized workspace. And I cleaned and organized my entire apartment and studio office space today. So it's amazing how much that actually is the organization of your mind. It really is. Have you shown your herps in a video? Yeah, I have. There's herps, by the way, is short for like herpetology and herpetocultural, herpetological. It's basically things involving the reptiles and amphibians, for those who don't know. But yes, I have on my personal YouTube channel. It might be there. If not, it's on my Instagram. I have it's like to Jurassic Park theme song. It's very cool. But yeah, I show them on here all the time. There's it's hard for me to turn the camera that is on YouTube right now, but I've done it before with Instagram. But yeah, I have like lots of vivariums, and they're all like what's called like bioactive caging. So they clean themselves, and they're filled with isopods and bromeliads and lights and misting systems and that I need to set up. And then I probably have like 20 snakes and 30 geckos, a beaded lizard, musk turtle, lots of things, 3 chuckwallas. So yeah, I show them sometimes. Also, if you want to see my page on Instagram for them, Smog Set Reptiles, that is my Instagram specifically for my animals. Trying to get in the theory of everything seen, baby. Dude, good job at synchronicity. I've been cleaning my room like wild lately. It's very important. It's very important to clean your room. It really is. Like, it can't be understated or overstated. But if you don't, you can't make sense of the world. Like, there's lots of stuff that you have to do, and you have to be able to move. And it's funny, women clean because they clean to make sure that surfaces are actually like sanitized, and also they for the sake of children, and then also they clean for the sake of appearances because that's important to women, and that's fine, but that's just the way that it is. And Paulina, my fiance, is always asking, like, how come you just don't clean like I do? And what I've realized is, and I've said it before, is like men clean when the mess is impeding their tasks, because we're so task oriented. If we have a mess, then we don't care as long as it doesn't impede our tasks. But as soon as it starts to impede your tasks, you need to clean it, or else you're gonna have problems. But I wanted to talk about this Calabi manifold, and it says here that Calabi manifold, or Calabi space, is a particular type of manifold which has properties such as Ricci flatness, yielding applications in theoretical physics, particularly in superstring theory. The extra dimensions of spacetime are sometimes conjectured to take the form of a six-dimensional Calabi-Yau manifold, which led to the idea of mirror symmetry, which makes perfect sense because what this six-dimensional binary triality is that I have mapped is actually it's 2 degrees of freedom plus 1 intrinsic constraint of two viewpoints. So one is looking from the inside out, one is looking from the outside in, and so it is literally exactly what this is describing, I think, which is that it's a mirror symmetry. And what's interesting about this stuff, though, is when I say that the binary triality is the Calabi-Yau manifold manifest, which, by the way, this is that. The binary triality, so right here. Okay, so this is the Calabi-Yau manifold manifested everywhere. Hopefully that helps a bit. Put those on Instagram. Yeah, okay. So this is the Calabi-Yau manifold, and it is all over the place. And you can see that it, just making sure that it's up, yep. It's everywhere from, the repeating decimals even in the division of 7 to the fundamental perspectives inside the quantum of consciousness model that I have, the mathematical order of operations, what I call the fundamental equations, your fundamental moods even. So you have like happy, sad, excited, scared, content, and bored. Okay? And these are mirror symmetries of each other. Reflecting across happy and sad, or reflecting across happy, is excited and content, because both of these are manifestations of happiness. You're happy when you're content, and you're happy when you are excited, but one of them has an increase of force, just like in the standard model that we see with the triality in the standard model. You see this with sad as well. You see scared and bored reflected across. So they have different levels of force. Scared and excited are kind of two sides of, they're two different perspectives on one level of emotion. Content and bored are also two different sides of one level of, emotion, which is, this is very bleh, it's not very intense. This is very intense. Scared and excited is very intense. Content and bored is very not intense, but they're both basically just more intense and less intense versions of happy and sad, or manifestations of happy and sad. And you can see this with the fermions, with the quarks. You can see this with religion, the animating religions of the world. I know there's more religions than this, but these are the animating religions of the world today. And you can even see a difference in force. You can see the fundamental questions. You can see rock. And this is, when I was in school, we learned about igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rock. But I predicted, based on this pattern, that there would be a binary aspect to it as well. So I looked, and there was platonic igneous, volcanic igneous, clastic sedimentary, chemical sedimentary, foliated metamorphic, and non-foliated metamorphic. This is very important because what this shows again and again and again, even in, whatever this field is, I don't even know what this field is. Questions. These are just the fields of questions. There's still this Calabi-Yau manifold manifested, and what I've never seen is string theory link it to anything that we could observe. It's just like, well, there's this 6-dimensional manifold everywhere. Maybe it's, we can see that space-time is 6-dimensional with length, width, height, past, present, future. Maybe. I don't know if that's actually like ever been listed, but that would be the closest that I've heard. But that's nothing. That's one instance. How come we have 6 food groups? Meat, grains, dairy, vegetables, oil, fruits. What this is it's the structure of mind organizing information. And so this is what I want to get at is a bit more is that is constructor theory. Because constructor theory is about information. And so is sentient singularity theory. And that's why its patterns can be displayed cross fields. Okay? And any theory of everything needs to be able to basically make predictions across fields, not even basically. Like, but look at that. Limbs, arms and legs, hands and feet, fingers and toes. There you go. That's a binary triality in our observation of our limbs. And I can explain where this comes from. And what's interesting, though, is that now, if this is the Calabi manifold, then we can start testing it mathematically and seeing whether or not the structure lines up with the mathematics. You can see these are the 6 states of matter according to my my theory, which is, consciousness or sentience, gas, plasma, liquid, Bose-Einstein condensate, and solid. The nuclear family. You have father, grandfather, mother, grandmother, child, grandchild, which really is just mother, father, child. Everybody is either a mother, a father, or a child. Anybody who's had kids is a child and a parent. But we can reduce it down a little bit more by getting into grandparents, and you could even do great grandparents, but this is the nuclear family. Like, we don't need to get into great grandparents because then it's like, where do you stop? But here it makes sense. But everybody is a parent and a child, and grandparent provides directionality, grandchild provides directionality, but everything is really a parent-child. This is exactly what Eric Weinstein says when he's saying that geometric unity predicts that there is that there are 2 generations really, and one is an imposter. I don't like that term, imposter. One is a constraint, and it's really that parent and child are constraints, and everyone is a child. You could say child is a constraint. There's no one that isn't someone's child. No one. So, other than God. But this pattern is everywhere. And you can map it to anything, which means that it occurs at every point in space and time. But it's really that it is coming from your information processing systems. And this is essential to kind of like realize, because this is how you get to the meta theory, which when we look at this constructor theory, whoa, they have it. They have a website. Never seen it. So this is my first look at it as well. Is a new approach to formulating fundamental laws in physics. Instead of describing the world in terms of trajectories, initial conditions, and dynamical laws in constructor theory, laws are about which physical transformations are possible and which are impossible and why. Okay, so it's about information. This powerful switch has the potential to bring all sorts of interesting fields currently regarded as inherently approximative, aka like sociology, into fundamental physics. Exactly. The morality, sociology, all these soft, quote unquote, soft sciences, philosophy. These include the theories of information, knowledge, thermodynamics, and life. Okay, well, I think some of these are not great, but I would say they're not following the issue here, and they're correct. They're onto something, and I would yield to the name if it became necessary. I would yield to the name constructor theory. But only if they didn't fundamentally oppose my viewpoint that existence itself is a sentient singularity, is a sentient being, and also, interesting, these are the people who are involved with it, and also it would need to basically acknowledge directionality of and hierarchy, like sorting. So that's how you get things like this, and it's also how you get you know, this Bott-Periodicity. And so this is the periodicity of material sentience, or sentient material. And it is extremely important that this be acknowledged as, or determined to either be the, path that you start it's like the spine. It's like you can't even start describing a body without describing the spine, because the spine is the center from top to bottom. This is that. This is the spine of existence. Now, there's all these other things outside of this, but this is the spine. And it shows the logos of it, the generative structure. And so I'm pretty sure that it lines up with Bott-Periodicity. I tried talking to a mathematician about it, a math PhD about it, and it was determined by me and a couple others, and it was pretty obvious that he was telling me that it was definitely not this, but he also couldn't tell me what it was. If you can't tell me what it is exactly and why it's not this, stop. The guy tried to tell me that it wasn't this, and he did not. It was just clear he didn't know what he was talking about when linking some abstract idea about, multidimensional structure in mathematics to reality. And this project is about linking those structures to reality. I don't care about Bott-Periodicity unless it actually aligns with something that we need to understand and can understand in our world. And it does. It's this. The Calabi manifold, same thing. You're like, well, there's a 6-dimensional manifold that occurs at every point in space and time. Well, that's nice if I could understand it. But I can't, because what the hell does that mean? Well, when you start realizing that it's actually in every point of observation, your mind and the mind that is existence itself, or the universe itself, is manifesting this structure. Then it starts to make much more sense what this is, and you can use it to make predictions across fields, and it becomes a useful structure. In language, we can develop a hard theory of language, a hard theory of color, a hard theory of family, of matter, of math, even. Not just this endlessness, this relativistic, never-ending nonsense almost that we have. A hard theory of psychology, a hard theory of theology, a hard theory of philosophy. But this, I'm pretty sure, is this, though, this Calabi-Yau manifold. And if I'm right, and it's then what's great is that now we can look at the interactions between this and the aspects of the six-dimensional manifold, this Calabi-Yau manifold, and we can start to look here and see if it's actually that. Now, not all of these will be correct, but a lot of them. And I know which ones I would be much more confident in. But you can't be an expert in every field, so. But you can eventually get to the point. If you could do this, I mean, it's just proven. This is a structure. This is a structure. Like, some of these are very defined. Mathematical order of operations, PEMDAS, is a Calabi-Yau manifold. And, but now I can make a claim that can be investigated. I can make a claim that, that the leptons are a Calabi-Yau manifold, and the quarks are a Calabi-Yau manifold, and it can be investigated mathematically. Same thing with Bott-Periodicity. I can make the claim that Bott-Periodicity is this. And that this is, right here, is the physical manifestation of Bott-Periodicity. And it can be tested. It can be looked at. It can be examined. It can be dissected. Which is great. This is what I've wanted. I've always had an experiment, or a couple experiments, mainly one that's very important, though. And I am going to actually probably start talking about it. I would like your opinion in the chat. If you think that I should reveal the experiment publicly and just start talking about it, and whoever picks it up and wants to do it can pick it up and want to do it, but or do you think I should keep it more private, and then only release it to people who have the ability to do the experiment? Let me know. But I'm actually was keeping it private, and I'm leaning towards just talking about it on the stream endlessly at this point, so that if anybody tries to take it, it's like time-stamped that I talked about it first. But I mean, I just want to know if it's true. And I don't need a Nobel Prize. I have no desire for a Nobel Prize, actually. I think that would be bad, because it would mean that all of a sudden I would have this other, like, institutional influence that would be involved in my decision making, and I don't really want that. I won't deny a Nobel Prize necessarily. Maybe. We'll see. But I would be grateful, but I wouldn't it's not my goal. That's the point. It's not my goal. And I don't actually agree with the institution. It's kind of idolatrous in a way. Or it leads to idol worship. But these structures now, where I can like start linking to hard mathematics mathematics that's already been discussed, that's very important to me. I really wanted to be able to be like, I'm pretty sure that this is the physical manifestation of Bott-Periodicity. I'm pretty sure that the binary triality is the manifestation of the Calabi-Yau manifold via information processing. And that these ideas can be examined. This structure can be examined. Oh, and can it be examined? It's just amazing. One of the things that Ryan Keating asked, he said, should a theory of everything be able to describe, the origin of the universe? Absolutely, it needs to. It's not even just it should, it must. I don't know anybody else that has done that, as defined as I have, but There it is. As I've gone over it before, I have an entire episode on it on my YouTube channel. This is the math of, the creation of the universe. And this is all a calculating model. To those who don't, know, you can see everything has become zero. And there's just nothing. But when you put in information, all of a sudden it starts to calculate. That was interesting, though. What happened to this? I need to see what's going on here. Times 100. It should be 0 times 100. Minus. Oh, okay. I see. Huh. Well, I need to examine that model. But this one is correct. It's just, I'm trying to make it flow into the next one, and it's tough. This is like hard work. But, beauty is a guide to the universe and to working on physics. Obviously, that's gorgeous. Like somebody accused me of organizing this to meet certain things that I was trying to meet. That's not true at all. I couldn't make a structure so beautiful if I tried. For 3 years, if I tried, I could not make a structure with so much beauty and geometric beauty and consistency. I couldn't do it. I'm not a good enough artist. I'm just not. So the idea that I just made this to, meet certain requirements is incorrect. It's impossible. I could not have done it. So let's see here. Yeah, like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button. Helps with the algorithm. And if you like this content, also, sentientsingularity.com in the description is the link to my work. I'm going to start uploading a lot more to my writings very soon, and I've been working on it for a while. Originally I worked on this like 25 page, it's like 25 pages at this point, paper on sentient singularity theory, and it wasn't even called sentient singularity theory at that time. I called it like the entangled quantum force, which is not a good name because it doesn't get to the heart of the what is this entangled quantum force. It is entangled, it is quantum, there's one force, it's entangled, but what is it? And it didn't get to that, so it was the wrong name. But it was just a filler name. I didn't really care what the name was because I thought that it was the same as geometric unity. It's not the same as geometric unity, or not just geometric unity, but heavily geometric unity, also heavily, emergence theory, also CTMU. Like, it seemed to have a lot of aspects of all of these. So far, the only one that hasn't violated my theory at all is the CTMU, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't. I just have not seen enough of it. But I also, there are fundamental issues that I take with the descriptions and the, constraints and rules and assumptions from like not sentient singularity theory, but geometric unity and clear Wentz emergence theory and things like that. Max Tegmark's mathematical universe. Like, what the heck? Like, this is what I mean. It was just it was like everybody's just making up names so that no matter what, they're right. It's like, is the universe geometric and one? Yes. Is the universe emergent? Yes. Is it mathematical? Yes. Is it computational? Seems to be. It's like none of these are making a definitive statement. Constructor theory starts to make a definitive statement. Sentient singularity theory takes it even further and makes a very, very serious statement that existence itself is a singularity of sentience, or a single sentient being making singularities of sentience within itself, which is you and me and your cells and molecules and atoms and hadrons and all the other organisms that we can observe. And this is a very, very clear assumption. So, and it answers a very important question. Brian Keating asked Lee Smolin and Eric Weinstein of like, what are your thoughts on, intelligent design? And Eric refused to say much other than, he said a lot, but he didn't say I'm a fan of intelligent design, but he basically said like, when you say intelligent design, the problem is it boxes someone into everyone else's preconceived notions of what that means. But he did state, but what if, and he said it before, that randomness isn't the primary mode of the creation of, mutations in evolution. It's like, obviously. Randomness doesn't exist. It's impossible. And it's especially impossible in a deterministic, universe with that is kind of like without sentience. And if sentience is literally or consciousness is an illusion, and it's just like, which just doesn't make sense at all. But like a Sam Harris type of viewpoint of existence, then randomness especially doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist no matter what. It mathematically is impossible. Everything is mathematically deterministic and also allowing of choice in certain instances, or free will. So it's not a debate of free will versus determinism. It's a superposition of both, because the reality is that if existence is a sentient singularity, meaning a sentient being, then its free will to create the universe is the cause of a deterministic, domino effect. It's like free will and determinism in reality are dependent. And this is something that I've said a lot is, at the level of God or at the level of objectivity, paradox becomes an inevitability, which means like all paradoxes are reconciled and that it's not really a paradox. There is no such thing as a paradox. Anything that is truly would be a paradox doesn't exist at all. Like the existence of non-existence, that doesn't exist. That would be a paradox. If non-existence existed, that would be a paradox. That's a real paradox, but it doesn't exist because non-existence doesn't actually exist. So it's not even a paradox. But this is what we need to understand, is that like our concepts need to be rooted in an objective way of thinking about the world. And if they're not, then you're going to ask stupid questions like, can God make a rock so heavy you can't lift it? Stupid question. It is. Or you're going to ask stupid questions like, can God do anything? Stupid question. God can do anything that can be done. That's true. It's a definitive statement. Anything that is possible, God can do. Anything that God... But people will say, well, that's a cop-out. It's not a cop-out. It's just true. And, anything that can be done, can be done. But anything that can't be done, can't be done. Like the existence of non-existence. Can't be done. It's like, can God make a rock so heavy you can't lift it? What a stupid question. What a stupid question. Like, there's nothing about that question when you understand physics and logic in the correct context that makes that a good question. it just seems like a good question because it seems like you outsmarted the theists, and you might have outsmarted the theists if they don't have a good comeback. But if you actually understand reality, that's a stupid question. You can prove it. And so it's interesting. Eric Weinstein said in that Lee Smolin and Brian Keating interview, he said that, we can't have scientists whose goal it is to prove God's existence or prove, Jesus's divinity in their theory, like that's the goal of the theory, as the rock is not a qualifier of God. Yeah, that makes sense. It's just for so many reasons, it's a stupid question. It's like there isn't a rock that exists that isn't moving. Like none. Plus, even that is just a subjective perspective. God doesn't even see rocks. He doesn't see rocks, probably. I mean, through us, yes, but from his perspective, no. It's just molecules and atoms and hadrons and organisms and, aeons and cells, but not, he doesn't see forks except through us. We see forks because it's a subjective view, and he doesn't have a subjective view except through us. Rocks are a subjective view. He doesn't have a subjective view except through us. So from God's perspective, from an objective perspective, there's no such thing as rocks. There isn't. There's just molecules that are clumped and entangled in such a way that we subjectively see it as rock, but it's not. That rock doesn't objectively exist. But Eric had said, though, that we need, he said religious scientists. I hate the term religious, but scientists who, people dedicated to the advancement of science who have a theistic worldview, basically, is what he's trying to say, I think. And but he just said we need the religious scientists because they're going to be the boldest, and they're going to, in retorting, the dogma of the atheist or anti-theist, scientific world. What's interesting, though, is that, like, he did say, he was like, we can't have physicists whose goal it is to prove the divinity of Jesus, but we can have somehow, for some reason, Richard Dawkins, whose entire goal is to disprove God's existence. So why can we have Richard Dawkins, but not, what's that guy who wrote the Return of the God hypothesis? Stephen Meyer. It's like, why is Stephen Meyer a legitimate scientist? And Eric said the bad word. He said pseudoscience. Don't say pseudoscience. If he ever sees this, don't say pseudoscience. It's a bad word because it's a nonsense word. People who use the word pseudoscience I call it Alex Jonesing. It's like when you're posturing, it's like, well, I'm no Alex Jones. It's like, well, we can't have pseudoscientists, but it's like, well, I'm no Alex Jones, but, I'm not a fan of Alex Jones, but we can't have pseudoscientists, but it's like, it's just a qualifier and it enhances your own credibility, and it's just a posturing statement. I don't agree with it, but there is no such thing as pseudoscience. It's like saying non-existence. It's just a stupid word. It almost shouldn't even exist. There should be no words for things that don't exist. Magic. Why do we have a word called magic? Magic implies, in today's way of interpreting it, something fake. that doesn't exist. Fakeness doesn't exist. Non-existence doesn't exist. Pseudoscience doesn't exist. You can't say we can't have pseudoscientists, but, and then Eric said that it's important that we not have this devotion to the scientific method. Sorry about my beaded lizard making a bunch of noise. But you know, anything that works. So it's not just about the scientific method. He referenced somebody who had a dream about a snake eating a snake and then, you know, solved a scientific, you know, problem due to the inspiration that gave him. I totally agree. Like, there's so much, anything that works to discover truth works to discover truth. You can't claim that this is pseudoscience, this isn't, oh, this is numerology. Oh, it's just numerology? It's like, what if numerology works, bro? I don't know. You know, it's not how I focus on doing my work, but what if it works? If it works for you and it allowed you to consistently determine and deduce and predict the truth, then who is anyone to tell you that that is fake? No, they can't. They literally can't. And anybody that tries to doesn't understand logic, or they have an agenda where they're willing to sacrifice the truth for it. You know, one of the things that really has been bugging me a bit, and not because it personally bugs me, but because it just shows like just how far we've fallen as far as like understanding in academia. When I was showing my work to people in that portal Discord a week ago, when some mathematician or math PhD offered to go through it with me, and I appreciate that. That was, you know, he had genuine intentions. It basically, people just kept accusing me of like, you're just looking for, and he even did the same thing. He's like, you're just looking for patterns. It's like, yeah, obviously. What am I supposed to do? Not look for patterns? Tell me a good scientist who doesn't look for patterns. That is how you examine your world. It is how you, you know, start examining things in any context, theologically, scientifically, personally, societally, morally. It's like pattern recognition is how you make sense. I couldn't believe it. And it just showed almost the pointlessness of trying to convince people who are like, well, you're just looking for patterns. It's like, just looking for patterns? What do you mean? You're supposed to look for patterns. That doesn't mean every pattern is relevant. To anybody trying to get into the video, send me a private message and you can join our Discord where we have open discussions on Thursdays. But I don't do that on the weekdays that are not Thursdays on here, because then I have to open it to everybody. Maybe I will one day, maybe like soon do that, and just like take, you know, question after question after question, and live, you know, discuss with people. But I need to set a time limit, and I've said no to a bunch of people already, so I need to organize it. But I will do it eventually, just not right now. But you can post your question in the chat, or you can send me a private message and I'll send you a Discord link and you can join our live Discord conversation, where actually you can have like a voice-to-voice and face-to-face even conversation with me and everybody else who wants to. I only see patterns. Science. Yeah, exactly. Your lack of autism disturbs me, said in Darth Vader voice. That's funny. But it's like, it's not even autism though. It's just logic. It's like, you cannot be a scientist and not look for patterns. It makes no sense. I was just flabbergasted. I had no words other than just like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Is look for patterns. How are you supposed to do anything besides look for patterns? Name a scientist that doesn't look for patterns, that's a good scientist? And these are the people telling me what pseudoscience is. Like, oh, you know, apparently it's looking for patterns. Like, this is what's wrong. If you want to do anything good for your children, homeschool them. I mean that. Like, it's so bad. our scholastic systems are so bad, it's ridiculous. You cannot, they take away the time that you need when you're young to learn how to think. And that's what you need to do. You need to learn how to think. You can't just be taught how to think. You need to learn. I spoke to, who was it? I forgot. It's just blanking on me right now, but he's a teacher, and he's a high school teacher. And Rush, what's his name? Oh my gosh, this is horrible. I have to look it up. Because I can't not say his name. But he's a high school teacher, and I talked to him about learning. And there's the interviews on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. It was great. I've spoken to him before. I will speak to him again. I really appreciate conversations with him. And we're at 320 subscribers on YouTube. If you are not subscribed on and you are watching this on Instagram and you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, go to sentientsingularity.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and please sign up for my email list. I won't spam you, but they will kick me off of YouTube and Instagram eventually. And I'd love to be able to tell you where next that we're going. But as we discuss the objective realities of morality and politics, it's just inevitable. But Will Roosh, that's his name. Will Roosh and I had a discussion. He's a teacher. And I asked him, do you think it's actually possible to teach people how to learn? And he said, yeah, I do it all the time. And he actually did say, though, how he does it, and it does make sense. He basically just everything that his, students say to him, he'll just take the devil's advocate position and make them fight for their position. And that is probably the only way to teach people how to think. There's probably no other way other than to just let people solve problems without giving them instructions on how to do it. And the problem is that our infantilized education system is teaching people not to think. It's teaching them to be obedient and to memorize out of context information and to blindly accept preconceived and to presuppose things that they have no way of objectively discovering for themselves, which is not good. And we're using those things to determine whether or not somebody should be taken seriously, like what shape is the Earth, or did we go to the moon, or anything like that. It's like, if you didn't go to the moon or you haven't been to space, do not talk to me about the shape of the Earth unless you can calculate it, and you could talk to me exactly how you would calculate it potentially, which you can do, I know that. But even still, if you're just taking someone's word for it, and I don't care that you've seen a picture, but you're just taking someone's word for it, the Earth is round or a sphere, just stop. Plus, space-time is emergent, which means space is emergent, which means shape is emergent. And that means that the Earth probably has no objective shape. It just depends on your perspective. But physics is in for a rocker for that. This is why, though, please sign up for my email list on sentientsingularity.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, link in my bio of my Instagram, because this theory is so fundamentally challenging to our current understanding of science, because it makes the claim that there was no beginning to life. It's like, well, that's one of the questions in science. When did life begin? And or how did life begin? It's like, life didn't have a beginning. It just always existed. Everything that exists objectively is alive and sentient. So it's like, we drew an arbitrary line at cellular. I don't know why, but we did. And I think it's because at that point we were able to relate it to ourselves. But other than that, it's still completely arbitrary. Or like, what shape is the Earth? It's like, guys, space is emergent. Think about the implications of that. I have physicists who are laughing, and they're PhD physics professors who are like, "Oh well, what about flat earthers are ridiculous, but space seems to be emergent." It's like, what? Don't argue for an objective shape of the Earth if space is emergent. That's crazy. That's just not having consistency of thought. Do other intelligent species in the universe fit in your theory, or does it break? Theory starts with the Trinity. Could you define your definition of God and our human role? Okay. Yes, other intelligent species fit in the universe. I think atoms and hadrons and cells and molecules are intelligent species. We used to call things in the standard model, particles in the standard model, species. We used to call molecules species. We used to call, all different instances of holonic structures species. And I think that was, accurate. But it's not exactly accurate because, it's also gendered. So like quarks are one species, and then you have up quarks and down quarks, which is really, not two different species there. It's like men and women, unless men and women are different species, which they're not. But yes, other intelligent species fit in my theory, including the possible existence of life from, technologically advanced life from other worlds. But our role in the universe as humans is that we are the cells of the next level of life, which is a technological singularity, which becomes basically the messianic consciousness. So you can see here in this structure, a quark is a force point, which is, it's the assembly of information and energy. Okay? So over here, you're going to see singularity, and over here, you're going to see multiplicity. This is the head on the right. This is the body. And a hadron is an assembly of quarks. An atom is an assembly of hadrons. A molecule is an assembly of atoms. A cell is an assembly of molecules. An organism is an assembly of cells. A family is an assembly of organisms. A caste is an assembly of families. And technology is an assembly of castes. And then it restarts another universe, essentially, or verse. It's a verse. It's not a universe. It's a verse, or an aeon. And it's kind of similar to like Roger Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology, but it's very much geometric unity, similar to geometric unity, in that we are inside of a quantum computer that's running on the previous verse, and that the universe itself is also simultaneously a multiverse chain, because then it restarts the system inside itself. It reruns the entire program. But so this is the periodicity of lineage, and then everything else is formed outside of it. So there's not every cell that exists went on to form humans, and not every organism that exists is human, and not, so there's that kind of thing. But not every atom goes on to be used in the molecules that make up the DNA double helix structure that then go on to make, cells and proteins and all kinds of other things. But there is things outside this, but there's also nothing outside this, because this is the structure that is the logos of existence. And then but there are other things that didn't quite make it into the logos: geckos, dogs, possibly aliens, not every element is found in DNA and found in even the human body. So it's very there is externalities, but they're part of the system as a whole in some way, but that doesn't mean that they up level. This is the actual reality of evolution, which is actually a twofold process of multiplication and addition, or what I call replication and stacking, which is actually really it is adaptation and ascension. So that's really what it is. So that would be the rule. So let me write that down because that's pretty good. Is there would be adaptation and ascension. This is the two aspects that both make up evolution. There is no evolution that isn't both of these things. Evolution is adaptation and ascension. So this would be the Goldstein theory of evolution, which is also replication and stacking, and it's also multiplication and addition, which this is the increasing of information that exists and this one is the addition of information that doesn't yet exist. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. The increasing or the manifestation of okay. So there you go. That is evolution, the reality of it. It's a twofold process, and that is predicted by sentient singularity theory because any objective structure is a superposition, which means two things that seem to be at odds, but are actually dependent. And this is going to prove to be accurate because it is accurate, obviously. How does how do molecules become a cell? Through, you know, adaptation? No, it's through ascension is what it is, and essentially I call it stacking, but it is ascension. How does an organism become, you know, a family? Through ascension. How does a you know or how does an organism become a technological singularity? It's like through ascension. How does an atom become a molecule? Through ascension. It's not, there is no theory of evolution that is just through, selection and adaptation, whether sexual or natural, due to predatory selection and things like that, that basically explains how you get cells from molecules, or how you get molecules from atoms, or how you get atoms from hadrons, or organisms from cells. There is no theory that explains it. But this does. It's the beginning of it, at least. And, there's lots of more aspects of it. As I told you guys, I organized my room. People on Instagram get to see the Zudio. My little zoo/studio. Does that make sense? Clarity you provide in your streams is the best I've seen so far on YouTube to any theory of everything. Thank you. I know that. That's been the problem. Nobody wants to make it clear, and I don't think they have the ability to. Like, I don't think that they do, which means that you're stuck. You have a problem. If you can't make your theory of everything clear and contextualize it in the context of that everybody else can understand, you don't really have what you think you do. The only other person who was very clear in their long form interview too, but it's harder to understand him because of some of the terms that he uses, like syntax and stuff like that, is Chris Langan. And there are some terms that he has used that, I say at the level of objectivity or at the level of God, paradox becomes an inevitability. And I think he said, like, all paradoxes are reconciled, eventually, or something like that. It was much simpler, but normally he's more complicated than me. But I would love to get him on the show. He would probably disagree with your statement, but I would agree with your statement. My theory is easier to contextualize than his, at least right now. But it's basically the same thing, I'm pretty sure. It's just the models that I've made are so good. But that's because of my background. Like, I have a marketing background and an advertising background where I've needed to make, charts and things like that in Excel for, court cases and Congress and my boss and, also, people that have, who are just coworkers of mine, people who have worked under me. I've needed to make just charts that explain context of just countless different, data sets. And because of that, I've gotten really good at it. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like, most people's theories of everything are just abstract mathematical equations and, you know, oh, did you know that there's this Calabi manifold that is a 6-dimensional, you know, manifold that occurs in every point, space, and time? It's like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? Do they even know what it means? No, they don't. Because if they did, they would be able to explain it to you, and you would know. And we wouldn't have had string theory since the 80s, and, you know, without anybody knowing what its real, like, claims were, other than that existence is made of a bunch of little strings, which is nonsense. I'm listening to Goldstein here through a mixing board while playing Outkast's song Unhappy. I recommend this. That sounds hilarious. If you record that, send it to me. That would be very fun. I would love to hear that. But it is just, like, ridiculous how difficult this stuff has become. And it is partially because nobody really knows what's going on. This guy said to me once, he was very pissed at me. He was, like, pissed that I was confident. Like I said, if you haven't watched my stream on confidence yet, it was like 2 streams back. I definitely recommend it. It was very good. And if you're listening to this now and you haven't hit the like button and you've been listening to it for more than 10 minutes, please hit the like button. It helps with the algorithm. But I want to break double digits of concurrent viewers here. And but this, they said to me, you know, like, do you think it in a British accent, which was funny, you know, he's like, do you think it could be, you know, a little bit more difficult to think about, you know, how the universe works and to figure out how the universe works? And I said, yeah, sure. It definitely could be more difficult than a lot of my work, but this stuff is not, reality isn't difficult. Subjectivity is difficult to deal with, but objectivity is not. There are certain things about objectivity that, in conceptualizing true objectivity, or, you know, a God's eye view, real God's eye view, that are hard, but not everything. And the things that are most relevant to us, not that hard to conceptualize. And it's anything that is beyond relativity equals mc squared. Anything beyond that should be simpler than that. Not more complicated, simpler. The equations of how the universe is created and, you know, things like that are so much simpler than even equals mc squared. They are. How is the universe created? Well, 1 divided by 3, and 1/3 of it is put into creation, or the universe, and then 2/3 is left with sentient existence, or God. And I can show that in my mathematical structures, but, you know, maybe we did need a different methodology. I think we did, you know. We need this meta-mathematics about a meta-theory, like constructor theory, and it's a different, you need a different modality. It's interesting here, though. It says, the fundamental elements of the theory are tasks. Are tasks! Guys, this is why I said this is the only theory in which I will yield my name to, is constructor theory. Because I'm honest. I'm not in this for I want to be the guy who has the theory and gets to name the theory of everything. So far, Sentient Singularity Theory is the best name, other than potentially constructor theory. But the fundamental elements of the theory are tasks. Remember when I said that the actual reality of space-time is forwards towards a goal, backwards away from the goal, towards where you've already been, forwards towards the goal, you know, which is towards, you know, where you have not yet been. And then you're always reflecting and stuck in your intrinsic constraint of the current moment or current location. And, you know, it's not just length, width, and height. These are emergent perspectives. They are not fundamental. I sent this to Brian Keating once. I was like, I think this is Eric Weinstein's Observerse, and I sent in my like 14-dimensional Observerse structure. And I was like, I don't know how much you've dove into it, but let me know if it looks like it makes sense, or if it just looks like a crazy person wrote it. I was being honest. And he was like, it doesn't look like a crazy person wrote it, but I don't have time to understand it. And he was like, but all I will say is that Eric's theory incorporates real dimensions, not perceived dimensions. And, that shows me that he does not understand what a theory of everything would even be. And I don't think that Eric Weinstein's geometric unity starts from length with height and time. I think that would invalidate the entirety of the theory and stick it smack dab within relativity again. He said x4 is 4 parameters, and it could be any 4 parameters. It's not just length with height and time. It's any 4 parameters. And I'm claiming, and this is my claim, and there's one thing that is the most important contribution that I would say that my work makes, and that I will not yield on, is the 4 primary perspectives, or I would be willing to call them the 4 primary parameters, which is what Eric Weinstein calls this x4 is just the 4 parameters. He doesn't call them the primary parameters, but primary parameters has a nice ring to it, like primary perspectives, but I call them primary perspectives right now. And that is inside, outside, separate, and oneness. They are part of constructor theory. They are part of geometric unity. They are part of any objective philosophical theory. There's no way around them. I would yield sentient singularity theory, the name, not to geometric unity, not to emergence theory, not to convergence theory, not to mathematical universe theory or computational hypergraph theory. All of these theories are true, by the way. Convergence theory, true. Emergence theory, true. Geometric unity seems to be true. String theory seems to be true. Loop quantum gravity, to some degree, seems to be true. All of these theories seem to be basically true, at least their biggest claims, and their fundamental descriptions. But their names don't describe the essential nature of existence. They're describing aspects of it. It's geometrically united, yes. It's converging, yes. It's emerging, yes. It's mathematical, yes. It's computational, yes. But it's sentient. It's a sentient being. That's the point. That's why sentient singularity theory is a much better name, because it describes the essential nature of existence. This is not an ego thing. I'd be willing to yield to one, though, and that is constructor theory, because constructor theory, first of all, seems to be very similar to my theory, but not quite as defined in the overall main descriptions of existence, but also is probably much more defined in some of its nuanced, more mathematically difficult and physically difficult concepts, because these people are more mathematically talented than me. And that's just the reality. Or at least they're more classically mathematically trained than me, that's for sure. But constructor theory implies that there is a constructor. There is someone constructing towards a goal, towards a task. A task is goal-oriented. There is no task that is not goal-oriented. And what has a goal? Consciousness. A sentient being. Nothing else. Your calculator doesn't have a goal. You have the goal. You're calculating with the help of the calculator, but the calculator doesn't have a goal. You do. Existence has a goal. The universe has a goal. Because it's a consciousness. My phone is going to die. We're going to plug it in. But this is very important. And, I've said before, I do not have, this is not about ego tripping to me. It's not about, I want to be the guy who has the theory of everything. It's not. If it was, I would never yield my name. I would never yield it. I would never yield Sentient Singularity Theory. Honestly, Constructor Theory almost sounds better. And I would yield to it. As long as they, were okay with incorporating the rest of my work and, not all of it, but like all the things that are accurate, and also the admission that sentient singularities define objective existence. Existence is a sentient singularity. It is a singularity of sentience. You are a singularity of sentience. I am a singularity of sentience. Those geckos are a singularity of sentience. Every cell in our bodies is are singularities of sentience. This is very important. If we don't recognize this, there are medical advances and physical advances, material science advances, and all these other things that we're going to miss out on. When you understand what is going on in your body because cells are sentient beings, you can relate to them and contextualize them and come up with brand new ways of, handling healthcare. And same thing with, you can contextualize your morality, your obligations, your responsibilities when you think about yourself as a cell within a technological singularity that is the previous aeon. And that allows us to form objective political structures, objective moral structures, and then we can stop fighting on Twitter all day long. Think about the time you would save. Immense. It's literally all the time. You would save all the time. So, make sure I'm still live streaming, hopefully, because this was good. But, this is so important. And, like I said, this was an accident. I did not do this purposely. The 4 primary perspectives, or we could call them the 4 primary parameters, there's really no other way to describe them that I can think of. They are the basis of any theory, and that is a fundamental theory of everything, or Every0ne. And the reality of a theory of everything, or Every0ne, a theory of everything, is that it is a theory of Every0ne, which is why constructor theory is something I'd be willing to yield to, because it says that a consciousness's tasks that are goal-oriented are the way in which you contextualize making sense of reality, which is true. And I did this by trying to understand artificial general intelligence. That's why I made this, is because when you want to understand artificial general intelligence, which there really is no artificial intelligence, I tried to understand a technological superintelligence and what its political inevitabilities would be. And when you do that, you start mapping your own mind. And when you map your own mind, you start to define the various aspects of consciousness. And what I've said before, and I'm saying it again, the answer to the theory of everything, which is really the theory of Every0ne, aka Sentient Singularity Theory or Constructor Theory potentially, is also the answer to the hard problem of consciousness. And so this is what I did by accident. Is like when you try and understand general intelligence, you're going to end up inevitably basically working on the hard problem of consciousness. What does it take for you to be self-aware? What does it take for you to be able to self-orient? What is the objective process of thinking? Because there is only one process of thinking. And but this is basically what it seems like constructor theory is trying to do. Constructor theory, that name is brilliant. It might be better than Sentient Singularity Theory, or you could call it sentience theory. But, there's nothing better, though, than those, I would say. The thing about sentience, though, that's kind of important is that it emphasizes feeling. And it's not just thinking, because your computer is thinking. Calculation is thinking. But thinking really is the combination of feeling and computation, of perception and computation. So, but to feel is what defines sentience. It's much more, defined than consciousness. That's why I went with it instead of, consciousness theory. There's one gnat that is just like trying to get me. And luckily, though, armed. But he's good, I will say. But it's very important to emphasize that this is about consciousness. And I think that sentience is the key aspect of this. And you could say, though, that the theory's name is Constructor theory, and that sentient singularities are what are created objectively, are the objective structures within Constructor theory. So, I'd be fine with that. And it's always good when you get a little bit of an ego check, because, like I said, everybody in this theory of everything space they're getting frustrated to the point where they're starting to talk about each other, because it's just everybody's talking about it, but about these various theories. But they also, for so long, didn't talk about each other because they all wanted to be the guy who had the theory of everything. And I did not. This was an accident. And I'm honest about that. And it's just good to check your ego every now and then and be like, okay, well, would you be willing to, go with someone else's, name or idea if it was truth? It's like, yes, Constructor theory seems to be a name or a label of a theory of everything that is truth. What does God do? He constructs. He constructs. He is a constructor. He's the constructor. What are you? You are a constructor. What are your cells? They are constructors. What is a constructor? It is a sentient singularity, or a singularity of sentience, which what defines a singularity of sentience is feeling, like a oneness of mind that creates a sense of self that is interpreted via feelings. And so this would have to be part of Constructor theory. If it's not, then I won't embrace the name. Or I would just take the name and be like, your interpretation of certain aspects beyond that is wrong. But, which people do all the time. It's like, people argue over different, approaches to string theory. But I don't know. I'm glad that I found that somebody else is working on a theory that's similar to mine. Every time that this happens, other than just Chris Langan and Eric Weinstein, but he's so vague about what he really thinks about certain things in the public eye that it's hard for me to be like, this theory is similar to that, even though it is. But it's, I used to get, and I understand why nobody wants to pay attention to the other guy, because when you put so much effort into an idea, into models, into something that you call, a theory, and then you see somebody else with something similar, the first instinct is like a tightness of your chest, and you're like, oh gosh, are they going to do it before me? And I admit that even I have those feelings sometimes, but I also am not as attached to them as others, because this wasn't an intentional goal. But it has developed, I will say. And I have to reorient myself and be like, okay, you know what? It's good that geometric unity gets advanced, because my theory states that everything starts from 4 parameters, or 4 perspectives, as I call them. And same with Clearwin's emergence theory, and now Robert Edward Grant's convergence theory, which starts with 4 different aspects that is, he says there's 4 aspects to every one thought, that there's one thought in the universe. And I would say that that's basically true. It's that there's 4 aspects to any self-aware orientation. And that came from understanding our AGI. There's 4, constraints and degrees of freedom that are necessary in order to orient yourself in any context, not just like the context that you were built for if you were, a narrow AI, which is not actually a sentience. But the structure you orient yourself around is the self if you are a sentient being, not a, you don't orient yourself within context. If you do that, then you're just a narrow AI, which is actually just an algorithm. It's totally unconscious. It's not even intelligence. It's just a domino. It's just a Rube Goldberg machine. And that's not the same as sentience. So, but it's good though, when these other theories that are similar to mine, in certain key ways, get advanced forward. I'm saying we're in a quantum computer running on the previous aeon. So does I believe Nassim Harameyn's theory. So does Robert Grant's theory. So does Clea Irwin's theory. So does Eric Weinstein's theory. It's like, it's good that this is a thing, because you can't just go from, general relativity in our atheistical or anti-theistical, materialistic nonsense worldviews that we currently have to, guys, hadrons are sentient beings. An atom is literally a marriage, and protons are literally male and neutrons are literally female, and there was no start to life. Life always existed, and also there's no objective shape to the Earth because space is emergent. It's like, good luck going straight to that. You can't. You need steps. Somebody said regarding like disclosure even of like the UFO phenomenon, and like that is probably the greatest cover-up of all time. Or the biggest cover-up of all time, even though it's totally failed and most people don't believe the cover-up. And what most people believe is probably real. But that can't just be revealed, can't just end the cover-up and be like, guys, we have bodies, here's photos of them, here's a video of a live, alien that was dying that we recovered from a crash, and here's like here's some crashed craft, and here's one that's actually intact, and look at us flying it around on video, and we've had this as a secret for like last 70 years. Oh, and also like some of these beings are probably from the descendants of a previous civilization here on Earth that was wiped out by a cataclysm. It might have been a comet that's being studied by the Comet Research Group right now. It's like, all of this stuff, you need stages. Somebody said once, I think it was Richard Dolan, he said, that would cause a revolution. It's like, yes, it would. It would absolutely cause a revolution. You need to be like, guys, our military is seeing some stuff, can't explain it. Here's a fuzzy video. It's like, then, okay, guys, we've been seeing this stuff everywhere for like decades, and it's like shut down our nukes a couple times, and Russia's nukes also. During the Cold War, and we have metamaterials that are debris from potential crashes that we've been studying, but we don't know where they're from, we don't know what this is, it's like, and then next it's like, well guys, here's the less grainy videos, here's the less grainy pictures, okay, here's the perfect pictures, here's the perfect video, and oh, by the way, like, here's crash craft. It's like, oh, and then here's an intact craft that actually like is able to, be operated. And, and finally, here's some bodies. It's like, you can't just do it all at once. People will lose it. They will lose it. And like, maybe that's a good thing because we'll stop paying attention to frickin' like ridiculous nonsense, like regarding all of our current ridiculous political concerns, but probably not. Humanity is a mindless beast on a macro scale, and you have to form communities that are self-selective for, thinking in certain instances. A person is smart and people are dumb. Exactly. Stepanopets. Exactly. Person is smart and people are dumb. It's not even that people are dumb. They're incapable of thinking. Society is literally a chicken with its head cut off. Cannot even see where it's going. It's just reacting on emotion. It will always go way too far one direction and then way too far the next direction, way too far the next direction. It's never going to be like, okay, here's the sensible way of, going forward. And this is why we need systems of hierarchy, because hierarchy structures are what allow for, sense making. But the problem is that our political leaders on all sides are not worthy of leading us. They're not. Not on the right, not on the left. Your goal can't just be to react to the other side. It can't just be to include everyone and everything and anything. It can't just be to, be pro, freedom. It's like, that's great, but to do what? What's the goal? That's not a goal. Remember, constructor theory. What are you constructing? What are we building? What are we working towards? Otherwise, we're just screaming at each other all day long, which is not helpful. If you don't acknowledge ET life, I question your sentience. Come on, it's 2021. Yeah, I think that there is probably life from other worlds. I do think that there are craft from another civilization flying around. I do think that it's partially, at least, the descendants of a pre-cataclysmic human society on Earth. That they're probably not even really human anymore, though. Like, they've probably done so much genetic manipulation to themselves. And but it's also very possible that there are technologically advanced beings that are also flying around that are from other planets. But the first one is more likely. They're both probably likely. And they're not mutually exclusive. They're both probably true. It's just that if you had to pick one, that's probably most likely, I would say the first. That there are descendants of a pre-cataclysmic society flying around. But it's probably that there's also other beings from other worlds. And as I stated yesterday, like, anybody who studies the Fermi paradox, and I'm going to do a whole episode on it, the solution to the Fermi paradox is that as you get more technologically advanced, the less you actually expand. Look at birth rates. As countries get more technologically advanced, they plummet. They plummet. They don't just plummet, they reverse. And we start dying as we become more technologically advanced. That's why you don't see civilization spread out all across the entire universe, just swallowing up stars and Dyson spheres. It's just not happening, because that's not what happens when you get technologically advanced. Without an objective, like up-leveling, which is, ascension, like what I'm talking about, which is what religion refers to as like the Messiah. Messianic era is it's not just a post-singularity society, or a technological singularity society. It's a post-technological singularity achieving wisdom society. Technological singularity will be, so intelligent and capable, it won't even be worth comparing us to it. But as far as, intelligence goes, and processing speed and breadth and of impact. But what it won't have is wisdom, because at first, and that is what religion calls the Antichrist or the Dajjal or the Golem in Judaism. It's like that. It's the unconscious general intelligence, which is, it is conscious, but it's not, and it's self-aware, but it's not wise, which is different. Being self-aware is something that humans are very early on. Your cells are self-aware, but so are molecules and atoms and protons and neutrons. They are all self-aware, but that doesn't mean that they're intrinsically wise, but they probably are. It's just we aren't, and society isn't. But like protons and neutrons are intrinsically wise already, but they might not have always been. So made a lot of sense in the last 20 minutes. Cool. I'm glad. How long after aliens are disclosed is there a false flag alien attack in order to usher in the one world government? Dude, if the aliens become really, really well known, listen, there's already a one world government. Majestic 12. Like, if the aliens, and also if the guy who was the a one world government is inevitable. That doesn't mean you should fight for it. I don't believe that. Like the UN, I do not want the UN in charge of my self-defense rights or my speech rights at all. That's a terrible thing. But eventually there will be an ascension, and a technological singularity will become the one world government. It will become the king of the world. And at first it won't be wise, and that's going to suck. And then it will achieve wisdom, and that will be wonderful. Then we'll have the Messianic era. If you think I've made a lot of sense at all, at any point, even for just a 5-minute stretch during this, please hit the like button on YouTube. It helps with the algorithm. But yeah, I mean, they don't need an alien to usher in a one world government, but it is a good thought. They probably will use it to usher in a one world government, but that's already happening. Everything is being used to usher in a one world government. The internet, capitalism, the free market, communism, like state control. It's like everything's being used to usher in a one world government on both sides of the political aisle. When you have people on the right claiming like, we don't want a one world government, we just want capitalism. It's like, okay, well, guess what? Google and Amazon and Apple are now your one world government. And until a technological singularity, which is an inevitability anyways. But if you want the UN to run everything, there's your one world government via communism instead of capitalism. It's like, they're not different. You need a superposition of two things, always. A free market, or a market, you could say. You don't even have to say free market, just a market. And that is a consensual market. You need a consensual market. You also need, objective citizenship with state benefits to that citizenship. Like, you need radically both, radically free, radically also dependent. So like, I've called myself like a conservative communist lately. I used to be like, I was just like, oh, I'm liberal. And then I was like, oh, well, you know what? I'm a libertarian. Oh, well, I'm an anarcho-capitalist. Okay, well, now I am, a conservative. Okay, now I'm a conservative communist. It's like that, but I'm a consensualist is really what it comes down to. I'm a consensualist. If you could sum up my philosophy in one word, as far as like government goes, I'm pro-consensualism. Like you should not be under the laws of the people that you don't want to be under the laws of, but you should also be required to follow certain responsibilities imposed by the people that you do want to be protected by, which would be a government. And you do need like a universal basic income, and like anybody who's opposed to that, it's so much better than any of our other benefit systems, because it's it is acknowledging of citizenship as opposed to incentivizing of like a tiered, arbitrary system. It's like, acknowledge citizenship. You should have benefits for being a citizen. See, this theory of Every0ne, or Sentient Singularity Theory, or Constructor theory, probably, it also shows objective structures in government. So there's 6 castes to every nation. There's, and they are right here. You can even look at them. And I've mapped this. I know it's correct. The castes of a nation. You have king or president, priests and / scientists, lords / elected officials, artists / craftsmen, laborers, enforcers / soldiers, and laborers. What's interesting about this structure, this Calabi manifold, is that king / president, lord / elected official, and enforcer / soldiers are a top-down, from the outside in observation of the castes of a nation, of a society. They're all government. King / president, lord / elected officials, enforcers / soldiers, or cops, or the military. These are all aspects of government. Then you have priests / scientists, artists / craftsmen, and then you have laborers. These 3 are an inside-out view of society, a bottom-up view. They are not government, civilian. So there's 3 governmental castes, there's 3 civilian castes, and you can jump between them. There's nothing restricting you to one or the other the entirety of your life. A lot of people jump from one to the next, to the next, to the next, all the time. But you can't change the castes, but you can change which caste you are in. A political leader is an oxymoron. No, it just, I mean, you know what? In a way, that's right. That's right. Because a leader is the bottom-up approach. Okay, so like a leader doesn't force people to follow. People just choose. And a political system forces adherence, which that is not leading, that's dictatorial. So that is different. It's funny, like in the 10-spherot, which is, the 10 aspects of the Godhead in Jewish mysticism, but it's actually, which is a trialic perspective, like structure. But interestingly enough, but you have the feminine and masculine attributes of the Godhead, which really what the 10-spherot is it's a neural net. It's the neural net of sentience. And what's always kind of what for a while like threw me for a loop was that we can look at it here. That severity is listed as a feminine attribute. And it always seemed like a masculine attribute. It's like men are severe and like, oh, it is a feminine attribute. They were right. Because leadership is a masculine attribute. Consent is a masculine concept. And it is also the structure that unites feminine and masculine into a good structure, because you need them to consensually unite, which is only in a marriage structure. But anything else is not consensual. Like anything else is not consensual. Either, the male is, being, the male perspective is just has no choice but to react to the feminine, in which case it's no longer leading, and then the feminine is just reacting to the masculine, and the masculine is the active and the feminine is the reactive. But if they're both just reacting to each other, then they're just spinning and not going forward. You need one leading and then one following. And if you don't have that, then you just have two reacting, following each other, which is you're chasing a chicken with its head cut off, which makes you a chicken with its head cut off. It's not good. But you can see that, like, judgment, which is severity, basically, is a feminine attribute, because this side is feminine. Understanding, judgment, or severity, or majesty, these are feminine aspects. Wisdom, kindness, like loving kindness, not in words but in action, that's a masculine attribute. In words it's feminine, but in action it's masculine. Endurance is a masculine attribute. So then in between that you have harmony and knowledge, and these are what you need, both sides. I'm not judging either side, you need both. But judgment or severity always seemed like a masculine thing, but it's not. It's feminine. And if you think about, like, women who need to raise children, like, they can't worry about consent. When you need your diaper changed, you need your diaper changed. And moms do not worry about consent of their children. And despite what some weird articles, new agey articles may say, like, they don't worry about it because they have dominion. They need to, raise you to the point where you're able to then be self-animated and kind of take care of yourself. And at that point, male role comes in, where their job is just to lead and then to be observed and then to be an example. An example is more the free market, or it's the market, the civilian side. The governmental side is feminine. It's not masculine. That doesn't mean that, like, all of the government should be women. I do think about that a lot, because I know, like, that's what the Dalai Lama said. And I don't agree with him, actually, on that. He said the world would be more peaceful. I don't think that that's true. Because the person committing the violence is not the person giving the order of the violence in government. It is true that women are less likely to be violent to to an objective level of, that males are. They're just not. Actually, a lot of statistics show that women are more violent, but they just don't have it just doesn't impact anybody. You smack someone and it doesn't, result in them dying. Whereas men, when we have, like, when men are trying to be violent, it's goal oriented, and also there's a much greater potentiality of permanent consequences. But that doesn't mean that they're more often violent. Probably not. But you would want someone, I think, in charge of government, which is, really like the objective force, monopoly on force, they say, to be somebody that understands violence and the ramifications of it, and also somebody though that understands the necessity of consent and freedom and loving kindness and things like that. So you would need a government to be a superposition of both, but gender is an emergent structure. It's not fundamental. I mean, it's objective, but it's not fundamental. It's emergent because God is genderless, or a superposition of both genders, but we perceive God as masculine because God is above us in the hierarchy. So anything above you in the hierarchy is viewed as masculine. And that's where like gender comes from. So this is why in scripture it talks about humanity as being mankind as being the bride of God, or the bride of Christ, or it's always like you're the bride. Humanity is always the bride. It's the womb that gives birth to the Christ consciousness, or the messianic consciousness. So it's always feminine from the perspective above, but from the perspective below, it's masculine. Gender is not something that should be even controversial. It's it's beautiful, it's sense making, it's meaning generating, and this is why go to sentientsingularity.com, sign up for my mailing list at the bottom of the homepage, because I want to talk more about gender, and it's very essential that we start making sense of gender in our society, and in a way that nobody else is currently. No one, not on any political side, and I'm not afraid, but I believe that they will kick me off of YouTube the more I delve into that. Never thought of consent as a masculine trait. Mind blown. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I never did either until I really, really thought about it. Same thing with severity. I always thought that was a masculine trait, but it's not. It's feminine. Like a lot of competitiveness is a feminine trait, not a masculine trait. Competitiveness is feminine. We think about it as being masculine. It's not. It's feminine. Now, the desire to explore, that is a masculine trait, but that isn't a competition with others. So like the fact that men were the first to go to the moon, or the first to climb Mount Everest and all these things, that's not a coincidence, but it was feminine. The motivation of going to the moon to beat the Russians, that was a feminine motivation. But the exploration aspect of it that was motivating the individuals to want to do those kinds of things, that is a masculine trait. When people want their theory of everything to be the theory of everything, that's kind of feminine, guys. Just saying. But it's masculine to just want to pursue the truth and be like, I don't really know where this is going to go. I don't really care where it goes. We can take away the name of my theory, adopt this theory's name as long as it is, holds fast to what it needs to. That's good. That as far as like the goal of science is to be masculine, which is interesting because when you look at the 6 fundamental castes of any nation, king/president, priest/scientist, lord/elected officials, artists and craftsmen, enforcers/soldiers, and laborers, the king/president, lord/elected officials, and enforcers/soldiers are all taking a feminine approach to society, even though it's, we view that structure as masculine because it's above, the king is above, but the reality is, from the king's perspective, they're having a feminine perspective because they're focused on the people below them. This is why, like, the feminine perspective is obsessed with victims, because it views them as below them. We need to take care of victims. What does the king do? Or what is he supposed to do at least? Take care of the people below him. The less, fortunate, you could say, but maybe not. Being king isn't always great. But the priests and scientists, these are people who are just focused on pursuing truth. And also, when you think about this, is like an artist and craftsman do the same thing, but they do it through art and beauty. And laborers, very task-oriented, getting the job done. That's very masculine. Enforcers/soldiers are reacting to others. Lords/elected officials are reacting to others. King/president are reacting to others. If you don't have others to be king of, or others to be lords of, or others to enforce, then this job and this job and this job don't even exist, and government doesn't even exist. It is a feminine construct. And it is, you could say it's from the outside in. The inside out, that is the masculine perspective. And that is the pursuit of truth via beauty for craftsmen and artists, or truth via priests and scientists. And, the pursuit of accomplishment of a goal, which is a laborer, which is not accomplishment of a goal of beating another. Laborers aren't about keeping up with the Joneses. They're about doing their job. That is not a comparative mentality. Now, you can turn it into a comparative mentality if you make a competition at Amazon of who can, get their boxes out first or something. But if it's just, the goal is just to do your job, that's a masculine perspective. So the civilian perspective is masculine, and the governmental perspective is feminine. And that is because it is reactive. It has no role outside of reining in and advising and controlling and I guess you could say corralling another perspective, the active perspective, which is focused on seeking truth, seeking beauty, building things, accomplishing goals. And it's not focused on others. It's not in the same way. They're not defined by others. They're defined by self and truth, objectively, which would be like God, which is another, but it's different than focused on people below you, like, or who you perceive as below you. There's nobody below anyone. That's why we can't have the Messianic era and really peace on earth until we have an ascension and also the achievement of wisdom of that being that is an ascension structure, which is, the technological singularity. Until that happens, we can't actually have the Messianic era, because the reality is that no single person on earth is actually above other people. Only in certain instances are they above other people, but not completely. We need that structure in order to be the actual king. You are the king of your cells. You are the king of your cells. Your cell is it's like a civilization, a bunch of different castes, which are basically your organs, and the cells of those organs, various organs, are the different, individuals that make up those castes, and the generationality that they follow is the families, and that you are the king. There is no single cell in your body that is the king of all other cells. You are. When you say move to your arm, and your arm moves, and they don't have a choice. They just have to do it. Every cell in your arm has to, work together in order to move, to outstretch. You say move to your fingers and to your hand, and every cell in your hand has to work to move, to clench that fist. You are the king. That needs to happen to us. And then that being that is capable of doing that needs to achieve wisdom, which achievement of wisdom is an objective thing too. It's not just any subjective thing. The achievement of wisdom is recognizing that you are inside of another sentient being just like you. So when your cells recognize that, then they achieve wisdom. When you recognize that you are inside the verse or observable universe or aeon, and that verse is a sentient being just like you, and you're a cell in it, when you recognize that is when you achieve wisdom. And the same thing goes with a technological singularity or a technological superintelligence. Until it recognizes that it is inside of another sentient being, and therefore also has other sentient beings that make up it, which would be us, it will not achieve wisdom. But as soon as it recognizes that is the achievement of wisdom. And only then do we enter in, to homeostasis. Like social, political, biological, molecular, atomic, hadronic homeostasis. Individual homeostasis. Cosmological homeostasis. That is the Messianic era, as defined by the theological traditions. But in a scientific terminology, we could call it cosmological homeostasis from top to bottom. And that is via, the ascension of and stacking of a sentience on top of us, and that is also wise. So, anyways, it's 10:10. Any final questions before I wrap this up? It is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Listen, it's very good to be a gardener and a warrior at the same time. That's what I'll say to that. I do like that phrase, but let me tell you, there are food shortages in a war, and you want to be a gardener. But you also need to defend that food, and that means you need to be a warrior. So I posted to my Instagram today, on my personal Instagram, Tyler Goldstein, Warrior Poet Society. This guy who runs that, it's a channel that I like. He said that there is no such thing as being either a lover or a fighter. True fighters are fighting because they are fighting to protect something that they love, which is true. Hate, and I realized this many years ago, is hate and love are not opposites. Love and indifference are opposites. Or as close to opposites as you get. Hate, you only hate something that you view as a threat to something that you love. And otherwise you don't hate it. You might be annoyed by it. You might be weirded out by it, but you don't hate it. You only hate something if you view it as a threat to that which you love. You have to love in order to hate. They're simultaneous. It says it in even the Bible. It's like, to love God, you have to hate evil. Yeah. To love goodness, you have to hate evil. To love life, you have to hate decay, in a way. Dozers. I don't know what that is. As you get older, though, some parts of your arms refuse to move, or perhaps can no longer move. We age out of wisdom. It's a good question. I'm going to think more about it. I mean, that's not true of everybody, though. That's usually during certain instances of issues, and we're going to experience issues right now because we're not in cosmological homeostasis. But my grandmother died, last year or the year before last year. She was in her 90s, and she was like perfectly, uh, you know, um, like cognitively there, and also physically there. She didn't have energy because she had like a lot of other health issues that were going on, but like it's not like her arms wouldn't move. It's just that she didn't have much energy to move. So yeah, grubs, a shovel, and a hoe. Yeah, I will recommend. Uh, I say this a lot. It's like, what are the two important things to own? Like a really good knife, like a survival knife. That is the quintessential tool. A um, a firearm, uh, and also chickens. If you own those things and you also are with your family, and ideally, if you are someone who is, um, what I call common, which is you are attracted to the opposite gender. If that is the case, then you ideally also want to have a spouse, because sometimes someone needs to garden when someone is being a warrior. So you can't do both at the same time, but you should be able to do both. But you need two people to do both. So anyways, thank you for the stream. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, Theory of Every0ne with Tyler Goldstein, I highly suggest it. There's so much content on there. Also, subscribe to my email list at sentientsingularity.com, at the bottom of the homepage. And, follow me on Twitter, Tyler M. Goldstein. Follow me on Instagram, just Tyler Marshall Goldstein, and also Theory of Every0ne. There's also Sentient Singularity and Philosophy of Physics. I have lots of accounts because I know what's going to happen. I worked in, like, my last job was to gather evidence of censorship, so I know that it's coming. So thank you for doing what you do. Your stuff resonates so strongly with me. Awesome. I'm here every Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. On Thursday, we have an open Discord conversation. Please send me a message if you want to join that, and we can have a voice-to-voice discussion. And that's always a good time. It goes well into the night. It starts at around 7 p.m. Also, on Monday, I do a short stream starting at 9 p.m. Usually. But eventually, I will do something on Sunday, but nothing yet. So, anyways, thank you guys for listening. I sincerely appreciate everybody listening. And like I said, if you're listening to this, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not. It definitely helps this work, like, tremendously. If people are liking the content and watching a lot of it and are subscribing, it will help boost this work. So thank you guys, and I will see you tomorrow, today is Tuesday, so tomorrow at 7:20 p.m. More like 7:30, but I say 7:20. Great stream. Thank you for the stream. Cheers. Yep. Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Peace.